Welcome to Fierce Compassion Podcast. My name is Brett William Simpson and I'm your host. If you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you're second on your own priority list and you're seeking a little bit of self-compassion and self-love, if you're looking to build resilience emotionally, mentally, physically, and even spiritually, then this is the podcast for you. I'm a spontaneous remission cancer survivor, and over the past 13 years, I've learned why some people pass from cancer and while others with the same diagnosis, with the same prognosis, end up living these amazing and fulfilling lives. So I tend to use very big words now: psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, neuroplasticity, to sound very clever, but more so to really explain and demystify the magic, or actually the science, of what really feeds our health and what starves disease. So Fierce Compassion Podcast shows up people who have wisdom in compassion, in healing, and in being fully human. So if you're willing and capable of taking responsibility for your healing and life, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Fierce Compassion Podcast, episode 5. And today I'm interviewing an amazingly good friend of mine, Carryn Ortlepp. Carryn is a professional networker in leadership development. She's a specialist in business operational management, and she's a highly reputable coach, mentor, and facilitator. Carryn's mantra, or the 3 words that really describe her quite well, are connect, create, and contour. She's currently the COO of Lockstep Leadership Development. She's developed her skills in operational excellence and project management at Green Route Destination Management, as well as 12 Apostles Hotel and Spa. She is also a specialist coach for TEDx Cape Town and TEDx Table Mountain, having had 2 of her speakers be invited to the prestigious TED Global. But the reason why I've asked Carryn to chat today is because of her skill and experience as a networker and community builder. So we explore different perspectives of community and how COVID-19 is changing how we connect with other human beings. But take it a step deeper, and in my professional role as a resilience and cancer coach, the research is showing quite dramatically that community plays a massive role in our well-being as well as our ultimate physical health. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Carryn. I hope it's illuminating. I hope you value after the end of it the importance and the critical part of how community plays a role in our health and our well-being. Please enjoy this podcast. Okay, Carryn, take 3. So Carryn, thank you very much for joining me on this. You are my networker. You're my community tribe expert in my life, and this is why I wanted to have a conversation with you. Tribe in Radical Remission, which is a study that I'm passionate about, is the most important thing around a spontaneous remission person healing. It's connecting with their community. It's feeling loved. It's feeling connected. It's being part of a group. It has biological and scientifically supported pillars, which are obvious. They're scientifically supported. Blue Zone work, same thing. People who live the longest in the world in these amazing pockets, they have community. Community is the absolute key. And this is essentially what I want to unpack with you a little bit today. So it's around the value of where we are and how the world is changing. So it's important to know that where we are right now. So we're in the easing of lockdown in South Africa, and it is a confusing space. Hugs are illegal, as I've found with a public hug every now and again and people around me, and respectfully, I understand that. So this whole dynamic of how we support one another, how we are as a community, and my bigger picture and my heart's passion around where we are is that there's a part of me that with this whole COVID-19 is like, thank goodness now we can realize how important each other are. Black Lives Matter, this whole separation is starting to dissolve. It's this, all of this separate identity is starting to kind of melt. And in the spiritual speak, it's like we're all one. And this is repeated. This theme of connections and how that is connected to our well-being, our health, is critical. It's the most important thing that is scientifically proven in Radical Remission and Blue Zones. And it's also something over the last week that has become so apparent to me on my networks, being the reasons why I'm happy. truthfully, like it is really, I mean, I understand that prisoners, solitary confinement is the worst punishment you can give a human beings, because this is, you know, it disconnects you from life itself, it seems. So that's my opening monologue. Excuse for the length of it. So there's a few questions that I'm going to get to here, and I'm going to take them one by one. So Carryn, you, and just to give a little bit more context from my side about you and why I feel very lucky to have you on this, is that you, in every aspect of your life, you got me to Africa Burn, which for me is around community. You know, that's a contentious subject for some people. You started Meet Cape Town, which is your own initiative, which was amazing, which I'd like you to speak to as well. You're in a role as a chief operating officer of Lockstep, which is a leadership sort of building organization, which you can speak into as well. But I suppose your essence for me is community building. It's getting people together. It's connecting people. I always come to you and I'm like, oh, do you know this person? And you're like, sure, boom, boom, boom. So it's that you've got this amazing skill in life to be able to connect people within a community context. So the first question, I'm just going to jump in, and I've mentioned a number of things here, Carryn, so please take your own entry into this. But how do I build a community in COVID-19, in this massive change, and whatever? And I know it's a huge question, but whatever speaks to your heart around where you are right now.
I think, well, let me I think being the first thing that I said, because of course community is really about feeling and emotion. But a key for me with community building is that there's some parts of it that will take effort and some parts of it that will be completely natural. And if you are wanting a real community of people who challenge you, who are interesting to you, who allow you to see the world in different ways, some of that might take effort. It might not be entirely comfortable for you to listen to a podcast or attend a class of people who think differently to you, who are going to challenge how you think. But that ends up being your community, because those are the people who you allow yourself to be most vulnerable with, who you allow yourself to be yourself with. And I think one of the things that COVID has done for us, the fact that we're all isolated, means that people have really had to make the effort. Like setting up, it sounds ridiculous that setting up a Zoom call with a group of friends might be more or less difficult than going to a picnic at Kirstenbosch. It's just almost building a new muscle that we're having to do. Where like the effort of going to a podcast or a group, a kind of class that I'm doing with a company called the Cohesive Collective, which is around race and race relations. How, like, I'm sitting in a thing, no one can see me do it. I'm really doing it for myself. So you have to kind of make the effort, I suppose, to build that community of people who think differently to you, and you can't, in some ways, many people build community because they want to be seen and because they want to have, get the kudos for always being in the right place at the right time. And what COVID's done, what lockdown's done, is taken that away, and you can really only do it for yourself. I actually hadn't thought about that, but I suppose part of what I like about being in spaces and in new places is being seen, and is that, like, okay, I'm going to learn about new things here. I'm going to go to a Pecha Kucha. I'm going to go to a TEDx Cape Town. I'm going to go to the internal TEDx Cape Town meetings, because it's a thing. And all of a sudden that bonus gets taken away. And I suppose one of the things that building a community now is really about being open to being yourself with someone you don't know online, rather than giving yourself, and you almost have to go into it like quite like hard. And I don't mean hard as in like tough, but you have to kind of go into it going, right, I'm going to meet this person online and I'm not going to know who they are, and I'm going to allow myself to be who I am without kind of getting their feel or their energy, and are they trustworthy? Are they safe? What are they thinking of me? You kind of have to go in and go like, I'm going to take this risk. It suddenly becomes a lot more risky, I suppose. In this
no,
world.
it's there's a couple of things there that are really, really powerful, because this is something that I've learned as well. I think I've known it for a long time, is that it's picking people who also stretch you as well. And when you spoke about that, I was like, oh my word, like I was just thinking through a few people in my life, and you being one of them for me, actually, who has thought differently in different ways in my life, that has helped me expand my perspective and my view. And especially with, at the moment, with like Black Lives Matters and everything that you're speaking about now, which is, I really love the direction that you've gone with that, is that being able to take the risk into expanding your worldview with people who think quite differently to you, and that intention, that being intentional, oof, powerful.
I mean, when we were chatting about this, I was thinking about how, you can curate your online feed, right? You can curate your social media to only tell you what you want to hear. I've got some friends on Facebook who are Donald Trump supporters, and I have this like visceral reaction, but I've kept them on because I'm like, every now and then I think, okay, let me take my judgment aside and let me go and see what. It doesn't last very long, I'll be honest with you, but I do try every now and then to go and try and see the other perspective of people who support that man. But as I said, it doesn't last very long. But I suppose in terms of community building, it's like, can you get to what's underneath the politics? Can you get to what's underneath the bluster and the stuff in the front, and then choose to really have deep connections with people? You spoke about how I know a lot of people, and obviously one of my privileges or benefits has been that I've lived in the same city most of my life. And I live in a part of the city that's quite a small kind of contained part. So, and my family knows a lot of people. So I've had that privilege and that opportunity offered to me. One of the things that's really been key for me is staying involved with TEDx Cape Town. I think I raised the age average there by about 10 years every time I walk into an engagement with these humans, because most of them are like hip and happening 22 to 32, 35-year-olds. And I come in as someone who's over 40, and I'm astounded by the genius that is in these people. And it is super cool to be a part of something that is that energetic, where everyone is a volunteer. And so you suddenly become part of a community because everyone has got the same goal, the same desire to share ideas. And that really, for me, is where community starts, is that if you're all in something for the same goal, then you have the sense of community immediately. And even if I extrapolate that to South Africa, with the World Cup 2020, we all had the same goal. Every single person in this country wanted to be shown as, like, we want our country to showcase itself brilliantly and amazingly. So when your community is about having people who've got similar goals, and maybe not your community, but your tribe at the time or your team at the time, that team gets you to a goal. And then from there, you have your relationships that you've developed that you can reconnect with and revisit over time. And I suppose that for me is where and how communities get built.
Yeah, it's fascinating. My head is going in 100 different places at the moment. So I want to keep on point, because I think what's going on for me is around, and you kind of got into the next question, which is what is intentional, what is not intentional. You've actually spoken into that already, because what I find as well around, like, let's use an example, the Africa Burn, we created an intentional group that went there. It's been one of those sorts of amazing opening things that have just cracked me open. And it's specifically around community that I've enjoyed the experience of Africa Burn 3 times, and it's because of you that I was introduced to that, which is again a reflection of why I want to have the conversation with you, because you're one of those sorts of people who bring people together in a different environment. But there was one interview that I just want to mention that I watched of Barack Obama, and he mentioned exactly what you're saying now, is that that we tend to have our social media stream against people that we agree with.
Yeah.
And I think what you said is just like, it resonates so deeply with me, and I get the goose flesh that we spoke about earlier around like it's so important to have somebody who's got a different perspective to you, that will help you be able to look at things maybe a little bit differently. Like an example for me is like Black Lives Matter. It's flaring up of a very deep wound at the moment on the planet. And, you know, as a white male, I'm sitting here going like, where am I in this? And I watched 13th on Netflix, and I felt very sick afterwards, because it just really hit me quite hard that I need to shut up and just educate myself a little bit on that right now. And what's happened in this within that space is actually a network that I connected with around mindfulness has now started a conversation around how do we show up. Let's just have discussions around this. So it's been, and that's intentional. So around your life, where you are at the moment, you know, what is intentionally happening for you, and what is unintentional that you have become aware of?
In terms of intentionality, you know, life can be very easy if you choose not to be intentional, and being unintentional is a choice. Yes. Because it's, you know, you can say, you know what, I'm not gonna, like, and you might even be unconscious about this, but I'm not going to make the effort. All I'm going to do is fight against what I don't believe. I'm not going to make the effort to understand what I don't believe. There's two different options. So for me, what helps my mental health is when I am choosing to be friends with someone or follow a Twitter account or a Instagram, which I know is different to my beliefs, is that I'm keep myself aware of that intentionality. You know, I keep myself, you know, when my one friend who is in my world very racist, etc., he posts, and my whole being kind of goes, and then I go, no, remember, you're staying friends with him specifically to get his perspective, because you actually respect this person as a human. And go and ask questions. I mean, I've had people unfriend me because I've asked too many questions sometimes, because I really would like to understand why you think all lives matter is a relevant response to Black Lives Matter. I really want to understand that. And you know, they get tired of me asking or pushing. But I think right now being intentional is more about, for me, is more about reading and learning than it is about finding a community that I can be intentional with. Because it is, particularly the race relationship, I think is such a personal thing. You know, I wouldn't want to go into, unless it is curated and specifically a group experience is created for the conversation, I wouldn't want to go into, say, a TEDx meeting and say, right, guys, I'd like to talk about race. Because firstly, that's my wish and my desire, and that puts the energy and the onus on other people to then come to the party. But if something is curated and put together, then absolutely I can go in then and feel like I can ask questions without putting the onus on others, white or black, to answer my questions without me doing my own research. In terms of intentionality generally, you know, my life is so much richer. My life is so much richer for having the opportunity to go out and learn new things and be exposed to new people. And I learn about myself massively. I had the privilege of coaching a woman to her TEDx talk a couple of years ago, who arrived on my doorstep, and I must be honest, I'd forgotten about our appointment, and she arrived and she was like, hello, Carryn, it's so nice to meet you. I'm really excited. And I was like, I have done no preparation, and this person arrived and she was this total whirlwind. And I just sat down and I said, okay, tell me how you got to where you are. And the story she told me was beyond, if I'd met her in the street, it was beyond anything I would ever have expected. And I had to go, Carryn, you've bought into your own stereotypes. You've underestimated this human being who has changed millions of lives, is an internationally respected in her field, and you've just kind of gone like, oh, okay, fine. And that realization about myself, and suddenly going, hang on a second, like, just be humble and realize that every person has the story, and every community has a story that we don't know anything about. And that, there's a reason people support Donald Trump. I don't understand, but there is a reason. And one of my coaches once told me that the onus of understanding is always on the person who is more emotionally aware. So it's my job as the more emotionally aware person to try and understand others rather than expect them to understand me. And I don't have to buy into that. I don't have to buy into it, and I certainly will not be going to a group event for that person ever. But I've tried. I still don't get it, but I've tried. And I think within community, that realization that people want to understand you is a key thing. You spoke about Africa Burn. And again, that's with having that commonality. Like, we're all there to have a good time. We're all there to be responsible for ourselves, to be radically inclusive, to be responsible for others, to take care of ourselves. One of the things I really like about Africa Burn is that they don't have stupid rules. I don't really like stupid rules. If their rule is don't camp here, it's because it's a floodbed. If their rule is, at this time we have silence, it's because the other 22 hours of the day you have massive blaring music, and they want to kind of balance that for people. So yeah.
And so also there's a project that I know that you created called Meet Cape Town, and so won't you explain that, and then through the context of that as well, what did you learn around community personally?
Sure. So Meet Cape Town has pretty much stopped, and isn't going anymore. And but my idea was to do a Humans of New York for Cape Town. And
explain that just for those people.
So Humans of New York is a guy named Brandon Stanton who goes and he takes a photograph of a person and he hears part of their story. And he's got a variety of questions that he asks. So he might say to you, Brett, who is the person who's had the biggest influence in your life? Right? Wow. Tell me that story. Or, Brett, if you had everyone in the world's attention for 3 minutes, what would you say to them? So he has a series of questions, which are quite cool, that he asks. And I have my sense of him is that the conversation is, an hour, 45 minutes, and then he distills it into this really beautiful story. So my idea was to create that for Cape Town, and I actually got a group of people together because I couldn't do it by myself, and I wanted to create all of this. And we went out and we spoke to people who were different to us. And I like something that is almost something that I regret deeply. It's almost something that I learned a huge amount about myself. But when I would go out and meet someone who was homeless, or meet someone who was a recovering drug addict, or a woman who was an accountant, but because her mother sold fish in Cork Bay, when her mother couldn't do it anymore, she had to give up her job as an accountant. And now for the last 20 years of her life, she has sold fish in Cork Bay. But you never in a million years would think that the lady with no teeth and a duck selling fish in Cork Bay actually has an accounting qualification. But because this was her family's work, and she went into it. And
sure.
Part of the reason I did it is because I believe that each of our stories exists, and no one sees that. They meet you straight up as you are right now. And what happened with Meet Cape Town is we had a success. We had one of our posts go viral to help a gentleman raise money for a home. And I literally, when that happened, and I realized that not only did I have the potential of making a really big difference, but we also had the potential of making a really big problem. Like we could put ourselves out there and like have people come back and be mean or nasty. I froze and I stopped. And because I was the driver, obviously my team stopped at the same time, which was quite interesting for me to learn. And it's something that sits with me quite regularly, is like how difficult it was to go out and hear someone else's story. And I feel like I needed a bit of a debrief afterwards, because they really sat with me. That connection really sat with me, because I wasn't going in with an agenda, and people opened themselves up. And suddenly I was like, what right do I have to ask people these questions? What business do I have to get up in their lives? And then suddenly going, hang on a second. And the response I got from people who read me Cape Town was great, because they said they would never have thought about that. When people see someone who's homeless, they're just like, oh, just a useless guy. But actually, what is the story that got them to that point? And I live in the city center of Cape Town, and we have a group, and they're just like, oh, these people who are setting up tents in the park, they're just awful, and we must get rid of them. They're all scumbags. It's like, actually, what's the story that got that person there?
Yeah.
And I don't know that if you're looking at a community, because of course that same community 5 posts later will be like, oh, I love this community. We're all so nice to each other. We help this person, give their son an iPad or whatever it is. And then 1 post later, it's like, can you believe the scumbags in the park? So no, our community is those people who we feel that we relate to. But how do we have to expand that, because It has to be with people that we don't relate to. Yes. And I think the trauma of COVID, which the whole world has gone through, we've had different experiences of that trauma, but we've all had the trauma. Is almost like, right, we're all fighting this. We are all fighting the spreading this disease. Someone once said, when your life is in danger immediately, then you're willing to make the change. But with climate change, because no one's life was in danger immediately, you're not willing to make the change. If like we've been saying for years, stop traveling in airplanes because it's damaging the environment. No one stopped traveling in airplanes. But stop traveling in airplanes because the chances are that you will die. Everyone stopped traveling in airplanes. But if we're talking about community, if we've all got the same goal, then we create a community.
Yeah, and it's those initiatives, and I found this again, just going back to Black Lives Matters and what you did with me, Cape Town, is expanding that community, so that larger community, which I think is the most noblest of works to do right now. It's and I've had a couple of friends of mine in Johannesburg who used to be raised Cape Townian actually, and I used to have this real challenging conversation that they were like, "Yeah, but you live in a bubble in Cape Town."
No, we do.
And in my whiteness and my privilege, I've grown to a deeper understanding of that bubble and how much of that bubble I am. Like, we've got
really are
in the Cape Flats, this gangsterism that is next level, and I know people who work in that space very bravely, and it's not something that touches me at all. But yet COVID, like you're saying, is now like, it's almost like death itself. It's like it's touching everybody. So there's a common experience that's happening there that in things like Meet Cape Town is expanding community to a different definition.
I don't know that we've had a common experience, but we've had a common reason for our lives changing dramatically. That's that saying of we're all in the same boat. We're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same storm. Right? We've got different levels of boat. But the thing with expanding one's circle, I suppose, in these spaces is going and look, for me, when we first went into lockdown, I clammed up. I did the opposite of what I expected to do, actually. I clammed up and I went like, it's just me, just my tight circle. I'm going to make sure that we're okay, and then I can relax. And, after about 3 weeks, I was suddenly like, okay, where can I contribute? Who can I help? And Ladles of Love has been incredible with that. And how can I make a difference? I need to make sure that the person who helps me clean my house, that she and her family are taken care of. Do I have other people who I would pay money to on a monthly basis who I can make sure that they're okay? So there's, beyond that first like panic, and then the relaxing and like, I'm going to be okay. And if I do get COVID, then that's actually, most of the world is going to get this at some point. And I have the health and the wellness and the access to medical care. That means I'll be fine. Sure. Whereas many people will not have that. and how do we make sure that shifts? We've got the Hospital of Hope in the Cape Town International Convention Centre. And my want is to, when I see a problem, that I want to solve it. And so one of my first thoughts when this all happened, I was like, they need to make the CTICC a hospital. And then why haven't they done this? And then 4 weeks later, I was like, you see, I told you.
I'm right. I got it.
I'm right. Like when we pull up my tweet and like screen grab it and send it off and see,
Yeah, no, I just find that so encouraging as well, because I like, and firstly, thank you for honoring where I made that error, because we're not in the same boat. You're exactly right. We're in the same storm, but we're having different experiences based on our level of privilege or whatever that is.
Wellness, health, age.
So beautiful, and what I'm finding, and as you were saying that, is that this bubble that I know that I live in, like I know that I've got this amazing privilege. If you look at my last week, I've just like I'm lucky, but what's happened for me is that this COVID thing has helped me stretch out of my bubble to understand what's going on, and slowly but surely, like testing that bubble to go, okay, well, what's happening here and what's happening there, like watching 13th, and then also connecting with people who are also susceptible, who are in my life, to go like, how are you doing? And then hearing that story and just being able to, just sitting there and just like having to breathe very deeply, because the deep awareness that I've got that like I am so fortunate in this situation that I'm in right now. So what I find comforting in that, and because there's a bit of despair there, but that I am starting to kind of stretch out there and understand and understand what people outside of my community, outside of my bubble, are starting to experience now, which has been humbling to the most incredible degree. And I'm still trying to chew on it now, and I've got goose flesh as I say that, and that's for me is something that is very real for me right now, is like, how do I reconcile me here and other people in different situations, that and a world that has gotten to that almost unfairness as it is, and how do I expand my community, even if it is not like, okay, cool, I'm going to have this person over for bra, but like, how do I breathe in their experiences and not and then have that slowly but surely integrate into something that I then step into action with as well. So that leads me into the last question that I have for you, Carryn, and that is, where do you see this in the future? Where do you see this community happening? Because in everything that we've spoken about, I mean, it's the core of health. It literally is. It's the core of health, scientifically and biologically proven. We're at a point now where we're starting to understand other people's experiences. I mean, you, a person who has created a project like Meet Cape Town out of this, so you've explored that area already. So where do you feel we're going? What can you speak into around that?
Yeah, one of the gifts of this has been the increased awareness of inequality. And another area that's been a blessing is almost because most people have had time, and a little bit more time to read, engage with different things online, is that there's almost like a comfortable place where we can get, those of us who are white and who are privileged can almost get uncomfortable. Like we can get a little bit uncomfortable at home on our couch watching something. And that kind of allows us to hopefully in the future stretch into being uncomfortable in someone's presence and staying there, because that's a gift, and it's not easy. You have to be really comfortable, you have to be really content with yourself to be able to sit in discomfort where you're aware of your own privilege and know that you can't necessarily help or change someone else's circumstances. It was one of my hardest things with Meet Cape Town, is sitting opposite someone and going, there is nothing I can do to help you. except share your story. Where do we go in the future? I don't know. I do know I miss hugs, and that they are key. I do know that at some point we're either going to have a vaccine or have developed some kind of herd immunity where we can get back to some semblance of having in-person connection with people, which we have to do. In the meantime, one of the things that's been beautiful from this is those community action networks, is something like Ladles of Love, where we have a massive inequality problem. And the point is that people are wanting to solve it. We want to solve that problem, no matter how big it is. And so something like Ladles of Love doing sandwich drives, they're trying to solve those problems, those community action networks. Like, right, actually what people have done is they've gone, I'm going to take the area of Brackenfell, just using that as a small space. In this immediate community, how can I make a difference to the people who are struggling in this immediate community? Almost like, if we can expand it and go like, look at the government of New Zealand. I mean, I have a bit of a crush on Jacinda Ardern, but what have they done? They've done, and they're on an island, so they have a different life world to the rest of us. But they've gone like, we look after ourselves, we make sure that we're okay, and then we can take care of the other people. How do we in Cape Town, in the city centre, make sure that the people who are living in tents in the park are taken care of and not vilified? And for me, I think that's how we're going to end up having to do it, is that we're not going to be able to worry about someone in Thailand or in, Kazakhstan, and really just focus on our immediate community. That really, for me, would be the key way I think that we are going to have to move forward. And hopefully, in time, that starts balancing itself out. I know in the education sector, at one point, they were considering twinning, where a previously Model C school would twin with a school in the townships, and they'd like, how do we help those schools become more equal? Because a community is only as strong as its weakest link. And if one person goes to bed hungry, is that community a success or is it not a success? And I, like as we've said, you and I sit in a very privileged situation. How do we use that privilege to share? How do we use that privilege to give details? How do we give ourselves, with our abilities and our qualifications and our work experience and our life experience, the opportunity to, reach out to someone and say, listen, you have challenges, and how can I help you get to a space where you are comfortable? And this is not about reaching out and saying, this is what I'm going to do for you. It's reaching out and saying, what do you need? And if you don't know what you need right now, how can I get you to a space where you actually have the safety to think about what you need? Because for many people, it's like, what I need right now is to have something to eat. And one of the NGOs that I know of, they generally work with gender-based violence and abuse against children. And they would typically fetch children and take care of their emotional health. And they are now fetching children to feed them, because that's what the problem is that our inequalities in this country have just been massively shown up. And my hope is that we use this opportunity to become a more equitable society. And that is, as someone who sits with a lot of privilege, not an easy thing to think about or to acknowledge that I am a massive part of the problem. But I can also in that moment be a massive part of the solution. So yeah, that's kind of where I hope that we're going.
That was beautifully said. Thank you so much, Carryn.
Sure.
I mean, there's a line that I heard from somebody, and I don't know where I got it from, but it's, and I'm speaking into community, not just into like Black Lives Matter or anything like that. But it's like, it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. And I really, that phrase is really landing and expanding inside of my head at the moment around what that means for me and what that means for our community in general in the world, down to exactly, and it's beautiful what you said around, how do we take care of the Brackenfell people? How do we take care of this community? And I've got a psychotherapist, and he's a priest as well. And I asked him, I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, just take care of the people that are in your circle. So it's beautiful wisdom, Carryn. So thank you so much for this conversation. Honestly, it has been, we've tried 3 times, and this was beautiful. And I so honor you for what you've done and how you work and who you are and how you show up.
Thank you, Brett. And thanks for creating this platform. I know your drive is around helping people, radical remission with cancer, helping them through that. But, there are many more different kinds of cancers other than the physical ones, and even the emotional, spiritual ones. This is going to help. So thank you very much for creating what you've done.
So thank you very much, Carryn. I hope as a listener that you found this entertaining, interesting, or insightful. And I also really hope that you might have a deeper understanding that community and our tribe and the people that we connect to have a very marked and tangible effect on our well-being and our immune systems, and how important those tribes are, how important creating and nurturing community is for our health and our well-being. And if you're interested and you're curious about following Carryn, I invite you to follow her on either Twitter or LinkedIn. So it would be at Carryn Peta, at CarrynPeta. And if you're looking for Carryn and that's on Twitter. And if you're looking for Carryn on LinkedIn, it's Carryn, Carryn. Her last name is Ortlepp, so Ortlepp on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find her. If you're curious about the courses that I deliver around health and wellness, specifically supporting people who are going through or past or healing past cancer and are seeking resilience and to build a level of resilience, please visit my website on www.brettwsimpson.com. And thank you very much for listening. I sincerely appreciate in this overwhelming environment of media speaking to us in every aspect of our lives that you've chosen to listen to this talk. So thank you for your ears. I sincerely appreciate it. I wish you great health. I wish you connection with your community. I wish you well-being. Thank you very much.